Thank you so much for coming this morning and welcome to Messiah College. My name is Rob Pepper and I have the privilege of serving here at the college as Dean of the School of Graduate Studies. It's great to have you all here for this event today. This is my first time at one of these and I was honored to be able to come here and welcome you all to Messiah. Family businesses have been important in my family. I was thinking about that this morning as I was driving in. Both of my grandfathers were deeply involved in family businesses, and as I reflect on the legacy they've had in our lives, I think that I'm able to do what I do because of what they passed on to my parents and then what my parents passed on to me. In fact, I would argue that the family business I'm involved in now is education. So we had one side of our family that was deeply involved in family-owned businesses, manufacturing, and then also the news and print media. And on the other side, it was all about education. And so I kind of chose the education side, and I'm thankful for that. I've had a great career here at Messiah, and as I've made some connections with some folks this morning, we're thankful that you're here at Messiah because of your connections, but also because of your interest in this topic. The graduate school is relatively new here at the college. In 2009, we started with one program. Now we have 9, and this year we'll enroll close to 600 students across the 8 programs. Our 9th program, our doctorate in physical therapy, will launch this summer. Perhaps you've heard about us or seen us as you've been in the mid-state traveling around, and we have students that are local, and we also have students from outside the region. A lot of our programs are online, and people do end up coming to campus for a week at a time to study in an intensive format. And where you're sitting right now is often the room we use when we greet them. So it's great to have you here, and you can be thinking about Messiah differently as a school of strong undergraduate studies, but also graduate school. One of the connections we have to family-owned businesses and those in the business and leadership area are our masters in business and strategic leadership. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Chris Cravey, who's the Program Director of Business and Leadership. He's going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing in that area.
Thanks, Rob. Good morning. Well, welcome to Messiah College. We're so glad to have you here. Rob mentioned kind of his affinity for family business. I've been here at Messiah. This is my 3rd year. And prior to coming to Messiah, I spent about 20 years in a 3rd-generation family-owned business. So I value these kinds of opportunities to be able to learn, network, and get together overall. So as we launched our MBA and Master of Strategic Leadership program about 4 years ago, one of the things that we found with students today is the demographic has shifted quite a bit. So many of us may have been used to going to a residential program, but our students were busy in their careers and family and life and looking at a completely online program. So our program is built online, but yet one of the things that was important to us is really leveraging the quality of the Messiah College experience, the educational excellence that they get in our undergrad business program, and part of what it means to be at Messiah. So one of the unique things about our program is we've really sought to recreate that brick and mortar feel in an online environment, which allows students to continue in their careers and be able to expand their education. We also were looking at ways in which we could differentiate ourselves. So certainly, our faith perspective and looking at business and leadership through the lens of faith and how that gives it deep meaning, value, and purpose is definitely a differentiator for us. But we're also looking at where are businesses going? What are some of the needs that they have, and how are they going to handle those needs? For example, digital marketing. Right, the way that we used to interact with our customers has completely changed to where now we're interacting with them on social media and through other networks, and people are more apt to listen to a complete stranger's review of a business or company than they are of what the company is saying about itself. So we looked in our program to tailor it to what are some specific concentrations where we can focus on some of these changes in business, things around digital marketing. How are we preparing leaders and managers? How are we looking at social enterprise and businesses as a force for good? We've also looked at how do we begin to merge really practitioners together into our program who have strong academic credentials. So we're looking for people who have that real world experience who can bridge theory and practice. So a lot of our students in our programs As you look at the assignments they're completing, they might be working within their own organizations to help develop the strategy of the organization, looking at business analytics and how can they make better decisions using data, developing marketing plans, and so forth. So we've really tried to take those fundamental business principles but use them in a very applied perspective. So I say all that, one, just to give you some background of what we're doing here at Messiah, but also to be able to lend you support. So if there's an interest that you have, maybe it's for you, maybe you're interested in taking a course, doing a certificate program, doing a degree program, maybe you have somebody in your organization that might be interested, or maybe you have a specific business challenge that maybe one of our faculty members could help you with. Even a grad student. Our grad students, as they complete their programs, they do a capstone project for a full semester. So if there's a challenge that maybe you have and you'd like a grad student to begin to look at that, help you work through that, we're here to help you. So I'm gonna leave some information in the back. I'll be around today. If there's any way that we can help support you, we'd love to do that. And we're so glad that you're here today, and welcome. Thank you.
Tell I'm the only one that's not a professor. I have notes. Good morning. My name's Ryan Brown, and I'm a senior manager with Brown, Schultz, Sheridan, and Fritz. And I'd like to welcome everybody to Messiah College this morning for our fourth seminar in this series for family and closely held businesses. I want to thank Messiah College for their hospitality, for providing breakfast, as well as this great venue for our seminar this morning. I'd also like to thank our additional sponsors, BNY Mellon, Gunn Mallory, and McNeese Wallace. Just a few initial housekeeping items here. We'll probably have a break around 10 o'clock, and then there is going to be lunch provided after the seminar. If you can stay, that's great, but it is going to be a grab-and-go kind of lunch. So our speaker this morning is Chris Snider, and Chris is the author of Walking to Destiny, which the book was, if you were at our last seminar, we provided the book for a takeaway. And Chris is going to be discussing the 4 C's, key factors that drive or kill your business value. He'll also be trying to incorporate discussing the exit planning survey results that were recently part of a Central Penn Business Journal survey. And we'll also have a question and answer portion after Chris's portion of his speech. So be thinking during his time. If you have any questions, write them down, and I'll be coming around to take your questions. A little bit about Chris. He was recognized as a finalist for the 2015 Middle Market Thought Leader of the Year Award by the Alliance of Mergers and Acquisition Advisors. Chris's pioneering work in the field of value acceleration and succession planning has established him as a trendsetter in the industry. Sought out after speaker, content provider, and educator across the globe. Early in his career, he acted as a system integrator, supply chain manager, and mergers and acquisition specialist for public companies such as the Sherwin-Williams Company, Price Waterhouse, FedEx Logistics, Nike, Dell Computer, Hewlett-Packard, Freightliner, and many others. A game-changing milestone in his career came when he began working with a middle market, family-owned business, which he helped grow from $90 million to $265 million in 3 years, resulting in a sale to a large multinational strategic buyer. Since leaving the corporate world, Chris has established a private consulting practice to advise business owners and their families on transition strategy and value acceleration, and introduced the value acceleration methodology to the industry. He also established Snider Premier Growth, a small family office with his son, which today has ownership stakes in 8 businesses, including the Exit Planning Institute. So please help me welcome our speaker, Chris Snider.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. How are you today? Might want to turn that microphone down a little bit. I'm a little bit loud sometimes. You ready to learn something today? Make some money? Yes? You ready to make some money? All right. How many business owners do we have in the room? Raise your hand, please. Excellent. Okay, the message this morning is primarily for you. The advisors will learn about this, but the message is primarily for you. And I speak to you as a business owner myself. The first 20 years or so of my career, I was a corporate guy, and eventually I took the plunge to become an entrepreneur. I have no regrets, but it is quite different when you sign the front of the check versus the back of the check, isn't it? Right? So I want you to know I understand what it's like to do that. Now, I heard you all have read my book, Walking to Destiny, right? Yes? Owners, read the book. That's the first step that you can take to learn, at least review Section 2, which gives you the core concepts. If you like that, I would go back to Section 1, which tells you what's going on in the market. And you need to know what's going on in the market because it's going to affect you and your families and your legacy. And it's really important, as you'll understand before I leave today. Then Section 3 really talks more about the details of value acceleration. And that might be a little too detailed for you if you want to do that. But that's when you can give Bruce a call or one of the other CEPAs in this area. Scott is a certified exit planning advisor. There's Scott in the back. You can give them a call, and they can kind of help you walk through that process. The last section gives you 6 things you can do immediately, all right? So it will be worth your time to read it because there's so much at stake. Now, when I wrote my book, this was, it's sort of like, it's one of my babies, right? My children, my wife, my business, those are also my babies. Some of them might be a little uglier than others, but they're still my babies. And writing a book, I didn't know when you write a book, anybody here has written a book here? Well, when you write a book, if you ever decide to do it, understand that you're going to have to write it at least 4 times. Right? So you start out, you sort of write everything out, and then you come back and you think, wow, I really got this down pretty good the first time through. And then you put it down and then you look at it like 2 weeks later and you go, oh my God, what was I thinking? So you end up rewriting it, then you give it to your peers, and they tell you, what was wrong with it, then you give it to an editor. So it's a big project. Now, where did the title of my book come from? Walking to Destiny. It actually came from a gospel song called Walking in My Destiny. And I was trying to search for a title for my book that I felt had meaning. And in the song, Mr. Williams sings about purpose, having purpose, following a process that will lead you to your destiny, which is to live in prosperity forever. And when I heard that, I thought, that's it. That's the message that I'm trying to give to business owners. Right? You need a purpose. Your purpose is your business. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's a combination. You need a process, right, that will lead you to the destiny so that you can live in prosperity the rest of your life. Now, I need to get this out of the way early. So as I said, when you look at me, what you see is you see a growth consultant, you see an owner, business owner like you, and you also are looking at an exit planner. Those are my 3 occupations. The challenge is that 2 of those occupations, most business owners, they don't like because of 2 words, consultant and exit. They don't like those 2 words, right? Now, I don't care what you call exit planning. You can call it growth, you can call it owner independence, you can call it exit planning. It's all the same thing. So you call it, as an owner, you call it whatever you're comfortable calling it. It doesn't matter what you call it. because what you'll see is that exit planning is really nothing more than good, solid business strategy. So one of the things that I've tried to change in the industry, one of the reasons I'm a so-called thought leader and trendsetter, is that when you think of exit planning, you think of it as the end, right? It says exit, right? You think of the end. And in most cases, people are thinking of, well, which way am I going to end? Am I going to sell my business? Am I going to transfer it to my children? Am I going to transfer it to my employees? Which way am I going to do it? What we've tried to do is back up the whole process way before that, which I'll show you in the methodology, to show you that really a solid exit starts with a solid business. And if you work and integrate the principles of exit planning into your business, which includes growth, which includes making your business probably more than anything else owner independent, you're going to have lots of options. Hopefully it'll be on your timeline. But the point is, forget the end. I don't want you to focus on the end. I want you to focus on right now. Because it's what you do every day in your businesses that's going to affect your outcome at the end, whenever that might be. So I run a series of roundtables in Northeast Ohio. One of the questions I ask the owners that come to my roundtables is if you had a choice between A, selling your business now and making enough money to be able to live at your current lifestyle for the rest of your life, or B, keeping your business and earning a dividend that would accomplish the same for the rest of your life, which way would you go? What way do you think most owners chose A? How many think A? How many think B? Yeah, B. It's 90% plus choose B. Why is that? Why do you think that is? Why would owners want to keep the business even though they could get out? It's their identity. It's their identity, right. It's their baby. They're already doing what they love to do, even though we might complain about it a few times. And some days are rougher than others, aren't they? Right? Those bank meetings, when a key employee leaves, right? Or you lose a key customer. Some of those days can be pretty tough, right? But really, we are already doing what we love to do. We love the game of business, and we love our businesses. That's why I say it's one of my babies. The real question you need to be asking yourself is not what exit planning is, It's what is my destiny? Where are you on this journey in life, of which your business is a big part of it? Every business has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Just like a life. It's reality. And so you really need to be saying, where am I headed? What's my direction, given where I am in my life right now, right? That's the real question you need to be asking yourself. Do I know what my business is worth today? Really, do I know? Can I prove it? Have I done everything I can to protect what I've already built? Am I building on that value? Am I exploring my options to harvest that wealth at some point in my life? And am I managing my wealth holistically? Those are the kinds of questions that you need to ask. So what we're going to explore today is really 4 objectives I'd like to leave you with. One is I'd like to show you a system that'll help you make more money right now. Second, I'd like to show you a system that'll give you independence from your business. Third, I want to increase your wealth by 400 to 500%. And fourth, I want to show you a system that'll empower your teams or your children, depending on who's going to take your business, to the next level. If we were able to accomplish those things this morning, would it be worth your time to come here today? Yeah? That's what I'm hoping to achieve. And I don't like to fail. So I'm hoping that you will go out of here understanding those 4 key takeaways today, okay? Now, here's the challenge. Before we get into this, I do want to cover some of the survey results. Here's the challenge. 75% of business owners regret leaving their business within 1 year of exiting. That was a study done by Price Waterhouse a number of years ago. 75%. 3 out of 4. So of the owners that are here, if 3 out of 4 of you regret the decision to exit a year from now, that's not going to be so good, is it? And did you know that only 20% of the businesses that go to market to sell actually result in a sale? Only 2 out of 10 that try it actually result in accomplishing that goal. So success rate's 20%. But you say, Chris, I'm not going to sell my business. I'm going to transfer it to my children. Well, your success rate there is only about 30%, depending on what generation you're in. If you're a Gen 1 business going to Gen 2, it's about 30% actually make it through Gen 2. And it gets progressively worse from there. Gen 2 to Gen 3 is only 12. Gen 3 to Gen 4 is only 2%. Do we have any Gen 4 businesses here? Congratulations. What, 1, 2, 3? 4? Congratulations. I've never had a crowd with that many fourth-generation businesses. Your families are doing something right, and you're definitely beating the odds. Any third-generation businesses? Congratulations. You're beating the odds as well. It's very difficult to accomplish that. Those of you that have been through family generational transfers, you understand what I'm talking about, how challenging that can be, right? I'm in a family business. My son runs one of my businesses. I'm in business with my dad. I'm in business with my brothers, so I understand what that's like as well. All right. So the success rate on transitioning a business is only about 20, 30%. So I figured, based on the number of owners in this room, we probably have about $400 million of business value sitting in this room, based on the averages. 400 million. So would it be acceptable if we would only be able to harvest 100 million out of that 400 million, that $300 million of business wealth would perish for pennies on the dollar? Is that acceptable? Of course not. And it doesn't have to be that way. Because what we know is that 20 to 30% of the businesses do successfully transition. So the question is, what are those people doing? And we have to emulate what they're doing. I, as a business owner, think that's a shame. It's a travesty that a business owner would work their entire life, or multiple lives if you're a multi-generation business, to only have that wealth perish. So why is that? Well, you guys did a survey locally here. Let's take a look at some of that data. In your books, you have this survey. Now, the Exit Planning Institute, one of my organizations, has been doing research with business owners since 2013. We've conducted 2 national surveys, and by the end of this year, we'll have conducted 10 regional surveys all across the country. And one of the things we're trying to find out is we know nationally what the statistics are, but then we wanted to go into these regional markets like yours and see how well your market lined up with the national data, right? And then also sort of test and prove out the national data as well. Are we seeing wildly different results by market? Are we seeing similar results? Basically, we're seeing similar results in every market we're going to. And what that tells me is that our data is pretty accurate, that most of what we're describing in terms of state of owner readiness is accurate information. In your particular case, what we're trying to accomplish with these state of owner readiness surveys is that why aren't more businesses successfully transitioning? And are there characteristics that show us when a business has a higher probability versus it doesn't? And the point is, it's like if we can point those things out to you, business owners, then you can take action on those items and you can improve your probability of successfully doing that. But here's one of the interesting things. I don't think you asked this in this question, but we've been asking it nationally. In, for example, Twin Cities, 99% of the business owners said they agreed with this statement. And I'm sure your results would be similar. It was 75% in Phoenix, which we released last week. Having a transition strategy is important to my business as well as important to my personal future. 99% in Twin Cities, 75% in Phoenix, and I'm sure the numbers are similar here. Yet what we're finding is that very few of you are actually prepared to transition your business. And that tells me a couple of things. One is you're underestimating what it's going to take. It's extremely difficult. I wish I could say it isn't, but it is. It's probably going to be one of the biggest business challenges and personal challenges you've ever had in your life. But it's worth it because it'll increase your wealth by 400 to 500% and carry on a legacy that you're not going to be able to carry on if you don't have that kind of wealth, right? Now, why is that? One of the things that I noticed in the survey, your survey, is that 88% of the owners surveyed did not have a written transition plan. 88%. 47% have done no planning at all. Well, what's liable to be the biggest financial event of their family's history, harvesting your wealth. In the national survey, the numbers were similar. Almost 50%, 49% had done no planning at all, and 34%, or actually 83% had no written plan. So you're pretty much in line with the national data. More than half of you have not done any contingency planning, meaning if something were to happen to you, what would happen to the business? And what should people do if you can't come to work anymore for whatever reason? Think about that. More than half are unprepared for that. On the national basis, it was about 40%. So your numbers are a little bit higher. But what you need to know is that 50% of exits are forced due to what we call one of the 5 Ds. And I think they talk about that in your article. You talk about that. You can read about the 5 Ds. Understand that. 50% of the owners in this room, odds are, you're going to be forced into your exit probably at the worst time of your life. So you've got to be ready all the time. 79% of you said that you were going to exit your business within the next 10 years. 8 out of 10 said they were going to exit. Nationally, that number is about 76%. So again, pretty close. 98% of your businesses are at least family controlled. 82% are family owned. So we definitely have a family component here. 77% of you are over 51 years old. So think about, put that data together. Most of us don't have a contingency plan. Most of us haven't prepared a transition plan, a written transition plan. Most of us are family business owners, and I'm sure you represent family values, because I'm a family owner too. I know what that's like. 80% of you are going to exit in the next 10 years or less, and 77% of you are over 50 years old. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? You're not going to have time. I'm telling you. You'll think back to this moment when that time comes, and you'll say, Chris told me I didn't have time. I'm telling you now, you got to have time. Exit planning is present tense. It's now. That's the way you have to start thinking about it. All right, 37%, when we asked, are you ready or not, about a third of you said, yeah, I think I'm ready. I don't know why, when almost 90% of you haven't written a plan. 63% not ready. This was interesting. Only 20% of you have had a formal valuation done, and I'm going to talk about that this morning. Yet almost 60% said you had a good understanding of what your company was worth. In Arizona and Phoenix last week, less than 5% of the business owners had had a formal valuation done. And 65% of them said, well, I have a good idea what my business is worth. How do you know? I call it the country club valuation. So-and-so said he sold his business for $10 million, and my business is probably about the same. Unless you have had a formal valuation done, you don't know. Understand this, 95% of M&A professionals indicate an owner's unrealistic expectation of value is the number one reason businesses don't transition. And I can tell you from my own experience, I've worked with hundreds of owners. I've started 14 businesses over the last 16 years. I can tell you that you have a tendency to overestimate the value of your business. I see it all the time. A good advisor is going to bring you down to earth, by the way. Don't be insulted if you have a good advisor. Don't be insulted when they challenge you. They're doing you a favor. They're going to bring you down to earth. So whatever number you have in your head, odds are, right, almost 9, at least 9 out of 10 chance, 95% chance, that number's too high. Significantly too high. And I'll show you, I'll give you an example a little bit later here. 83% have no formal transition team. We'll talk about who needs to be on the team today as well. And as far as options go, one of the questions we ask is, are you familiar with all your exit options? How many here think they're familiar with all their exit options? Raise their hand, owners. Good, you're honest. 75% of the business owners said they weren't aware of all their exit options. I think it was actually 32% said they were unsure, which means what? They're not, right? They're not. If you're not sure, then you're not. So, yeah, 75%. On a national basis, it's 2/3. Now, that's important because what happens is you've got a lot of options. If your business is teed up and your personal situation is teed up, it's going to open up a bunch of options for you, which are, there's some really good options. ESOPs, family, management. It opens up a whole series of things, but you have to be in a position financially in your business in order to take advantage of some of those. The number one thing I look for in evaluating a business is owner independence. Because if a business is owner independent, it implies that it has strong human capital, strong customer capital, strong structural capital, and strong culture. It has to. Otherwise, the owner couldn't be away from the business. And so, if there's nothing else that you'll take away, one takeaway you should have had already is that you need to get a formal valuation done. That's where it all starts. Second takeaway, right, would be make your business owner independent. Because that'll free you up to get to this stuff. Now, most of the time, owners aren't doing this because we don't understand what we have to do. Why would you? This isn't your business, and for most of you, it's a once-in-a-lifetime event. So you don't know what you don't know. That's why you need to bring in some experts to help you. We had a panel at one of our sessions a few weeks ago. We had a panel of business owners that have exited at our owner forum out in San Francisco. And the common denominator among those owners was they said we had to go outside and get some help because this isn't our business. You know, I'm in the business of manufacturing plastics, or I'm in the business of distribution, or I'm in healthcare. You're not in the business of transitioning a business. Most of you have never done it before. You know, so you don't know what you don't know, right? And so you need to reach out and get some help. All right. 66% of you have not had any formal education. And on a national basis, that was up even higher. So you've not done any formal education on transitioning a business. So again, you don't know what you don't know. All right? One of the things that we have found that's important in some markets where we've seen stronger readiness is one of the most important things, one of the most important common denominators is a board of advisors with non-family members on the board. So that would be one thing I would tell you, that if you have a board of advisors with non-family members on the board, you're better than 9 out of 10 companies. I just joined another board in Northeast Ohio, and it's a second generation going to third, and that's exactly what I said to the dad, is I said, you know what? By doing nothing but forming this board and bringing some non-family members onto it, you're already better than 90% of the other businesses out there. So if that's one thing you could do, is get some non-family members on there. A number of you have boards, but you don't have non-family members. And you need people on there that are going to be honest and tell you what you need to hear, because most people won't do that, including some of your advisors. For some of your advisors, your recurring revenue, they don't want to challenge that, and they may be afraid to challenge you. So again, you want advisors who are going to challenge you. Be respectful, but still challenge you. Okay? If you want to look at the other surveys that have been done by the Exit Planning Institute, you can go to ownerreadiness.com. It's ownerreadiness.com, and you can download all the reports there. Well, like I say, over the rest of the year, by the end of the year, we'll have completed 10 regional surveys, and then we're going to consolidate all that data, and then we're going to release a national survey that sort of compares the entire market, okay? All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go about another half an hour here, and then we're going to take a break at 9:50, and then we'll come back, and then we'll go about another 45 minutes, 40 minutes, something like that, depending on how many questions you have, okay? Does that sound fair? Okay. So all this talk about exit, again, it's whether we're talking exit, we're talking growth, we're talking owner independence, it's all the same thing. And really what it all needs to do is it all needs to revolve around value. Value is the key component of your business that you need to manage first. So there's a question of value and income. I write about it in Walking to Destiny. Value or income. You can have both, but only if you focus on value first. Now you're saying, well, what does that mean, Chris? Just because you have a business that produces income doesn't mean it has any value. Let me repeat that. Just because you produce nice income doesn't necessarily mean you have any value. There's a difference. So here's an example. I evaluated a business a couple of years ago. I was with a business owner, and it was a $33.4 million business in sales. Pretty nice sized business. Over the prior 3 years, he had grown the business at a compound annual growth rate of 15%. Pretty good, right? You'll double the business every 5 years when you grow at that rate. He had grown EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, by a compound annual growth rate of 27%. So even better. And he had grown that EBITDA to about $2.5 million from about 1.2. Was really doing a great job with that, right? So he asked me to come in and take a look at his business, and I go through a process of an interview that I do with the business owner. It takes about 3 hours. We look at 151 different factors, value factors related to the business on a personal, financial, and business standpoint. And we concluded the interview, and he said to me, Chris, what do you think? And I'm like, well, I gotta go back, analyze the information, and I didn't really want to give him the news, And he said, come on, you've done hundreds of these, What do you think? I said, well, Norm, it's not worth anything. Well, he got so red in the face. He got pretty mad. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm growing 15% a year. My EBITDA is growing 27% a year. I'm doing $30 million a year, and you're telling me my business doesn't have any value? Now he started questioning my value, right? And I said, it doesn't. Let me explain why. When we looked at the business, he had good structure. I mean, he had good financial structure, a good set of financials, and he had a good track record. Yes, yes, yes. But he had a couple deal killers. One is his business was dependent on him. So here's the background story. He was a corporate guy that left the corporate world, started his own business, and brought some of his old customers who felt loyal to him to his new company, right? And he was a small player in a big market. And they moved their business to him out of loyalty to him. Now, he was still also the low-cost producer, so there was some value being driven there. But primarily, the relationships were tied to the business owner. And he hadn't done anything to transfer those relationships over to the company. So I said to him, what happens, and by the way, there's a 50% chance, what happens if something happens to you? What happens to those relationships? Or let's look at the other side. One of your corporate buddies gets promoted or decides to leave the company and go somewhere else, or gets fired. What happens to you? So that's a big problem. Owner dependence was a big problem. He also told me that he was the best salesperson in the company and that maybe there was one other person that could come close to how he sells. Like he was almost proud of it. And I said, well, that's a bad thing, right? We don't want you to be the only salesperson. We have to take why you're so successful at sales, and we have to teach other people how to do it so they can do it. And you can go do something else, right? So owner dependence was a huge issue. Another one was what I call clustered customer concentration, and that's a common issue we see in businesses, especially small to medium businesses, meaning that 80% of his revenue was tied to 3 customers. These 3 buddies of his that came over from corporate. And that's where most of his growth was coming from, and that's where most of his revenue was. So I said the same question, what happens if those customers go away? Or they decide to bring the corporate program inside instead of giving it out, instead of outsourcing it. You got 80% of your revenue tied to 3 customers. If you were the person looking to buy that business, wouldn't that make you nervous? And there were other issues, the ones that we just talked about in the survey, right? There was no transition. He had no written transition plan, right? He hadn't had, until he brought me in, he hadn't had a formal valuation done. He had no written strategy. He had no customer testimonials. He really didn't do marketing because he was relying on his relationships, not on a marketing system, right? And on the personal side, no estate plan, no personal financial plan, no contingency plan. So I said to him, I said, Norm, what would somebody be buying? There's too much risk. Now, maybe they give you pennies on the dollar. Maybe they decide, look, we want those big players that you compete against. Maybe what we decide is we want those customers back. And so we're going to buy those customers back from you, and we'll give you 20 cents on the dollar. But most likely what they're going to say is, we're just going to wait for him to go down, and then we'll just take it back. And I've seen owners go down, because they weren't prepared when something like that happened. So, how much value does that $33 million business have? Not much. Not much. So that's what I'm talking about. We call that the difference between being attractive and being ready. They're not the same thing. An attractive business is how a business looks from the outside in. So looking outside in at, we'll call this company CWR, it looked pretty attractive. Good size company, good revenue growth, right? Good profit. But when you look inside, readiness, that being owner personal readiness and business readiness, not so good. So what happens when we take a business that looks attractive but is not ready to market? What happens? What do you think happens? The business looks attractive. Let's say I'd taken CWR to the market. What do you think would have happened? Anybody? No ideas? Yeah, reality check? Yeah, meaning what? Right. He's going to get below offer. If he gets any offers, right? They're going to be low. And the buyer's going to shift the burden over to him. Because they'll say, you know what, I do like that $30 million of revenue, but I'm not going to take all the risk. You're going to have to absorb the risk. So what happens, either the price comes down or the terms shift to the buyer's favor instead of his favor. Or they look under the hood and they see all the problems and they say, there's just too much risk, I'm not going forward with this. That's why you have such poor selling rates, right? Only 20% of the businesses that go to market actually result in a sale because the businesses aren't prepared to really go to market. And unfortunately, your advisor or advisor team is taking you to market. If you were my client, I'd say, absolutely, I'm not taking you to market. It's a waste of your time and money. You won't sell, right? So that's what would happen. Now, would the owner of CWR have benefited from focusing on value and not just income? Absolutely, absolutely. You see how the shift, it sounds like a little play on words, but it's actually a real paradigm shift in your mind about your business. This is what I want you to take away. Because when you focus on value first, you also drive income. Because what builds value, or what I'm going to get to here, is the 4 C's. And the stronger your 4 C's, the better your company's going to perform, the better your family's going to perform, the greater opportunity you have to perform better right now, and positioning you to harvest the wealth at some point in your future. But that only comes if you focus on value first, not just income. All right. Now, there's 2 types of businesses I've seen in my career. I call them lifestyle businesses and value creator businesses. What's the difference between a lifestyle business and a value creator business? What's the difference? You got to figure out what business you are. So was CWR a lifestyle business or a value creator business? Lifestyle, yeah, obviously, right? Right, it's a lifestyle business. So a lifestyle business generates income, and usually pretty good income. That's one of the benefits of being a business owner. We typically make pretty good money. Our children go to, at least the opportunity to go to private schools. We drive nice cars. Some of us have second homes. We have financial security, or at least we think we do, until it comes time to exit, right? We live a pretty good life as a business owner. That's one of the benefits. Generates good income. But a lifestyle business is owner dependent, and it won't ever be sold, nor will it be successfully transitioned. Because what happens, sometimes I say, an owner will say, look, I don't have to do this, Chris, because I'm not selling, I'm just transitioning to my family. Yes, you do, because you don't want to transfer all your risk to your children. You don't want to send over a business that's undercapitalized to your children. I wouldn't want to transfer CWR to my children. It's already hard enough for my children to take over my legacy, let alone now have them dependent on me, who's no longer there anymore, because I didn't transfer the relationships. I do a lot of work with families. I was at a really nice family I've been working with a long time. 2 years ago, we brought in his daughter, Randy's daughter, and we're getting ready for the first board meeting, right? And Randy's all excited because he wants his daughter, Abby, to take over the board meeting. So we're in the board meeting, and the board's there, and where do you think the board is directing all their questions? To who? To Dad, yeah. All the questions are going to Randy, right? And is Randy answering the questions? Yeah, he's answering the questions. It's just what they're used to, right? So afterwards, the 3 of us get together, and he's like, how do we do? And I said, I think I'm going to have to sit next to you the next time so I can kick you under the table. He's like, why? What did I do? I said, you answered all the questions. You got to redirect. You got to redirect the questions to Abby because she's in charge now. You're not in charge anymore. He says, that's a good idea. You sit next to me the next time so that you can kick me and I can redirect, right? So little things like that on the family, those things are true and they actually do happen. A value creator business is a business that can be sold. or transitioned. I would also argue that it's also in the premier category when it comes to producing net profit because it has stronger 4 C's and it's owner independent. So if you say to me, if you're sitting there right now and you're saying, Chris, I'm not even thinking about exiting right now. It's not what I'm interested in. Well, if you're not going to exit, you need an owner independent business more than ever, right? So you say, fine, then just pull a dividend for as long as you want to pull a dividend. But you're still free, you're still independent to go do other things instead of being chained to your office and chained to your business. All right. How to be a value creator. In my book, I talk about the 11 actions every owner must take to unlock wealth and rapidly grow value. These are the 11 actions here. And we can't cover all of them today, right? But what you can do is you can read that book, and I frame them as paradigm shifts. It's a different way of thinking about your business that results in you producing an action. And you should look at these actions. If nothing else, look at these actions and score yourself. Am I strong, weak, neutral? Or, do it on some sort of a scale. And how well are you addressing each of those particular factors? Today, we're going to cover the 4 C's, creating intangible assets, which is where 80% of your business lies. All right? This is a little difficult probably for you to read out in the audience, but there's 2 graphs up here. Business owner's net worth. On the left is the business owner's net worth without the business included in it. And what you see there in the different colors is, they've got a certain amount of bonds. I think in this case we had about 60%, 50% bonds. We had about 35% stocks. Looks like about 8% real estate. A typical owner portfolio, business owner portfolio. On the right, we call that the Pac-Man chart, right? On the right, we've added the business. That big black section there, the Pac-Man, is the value of the business. So in this case, on the left, we're looking at a portfolio of $2 million. On the right, we're looking at a portfolio of $10 million. Most financial planners will tell you most business owners have 80% or more of their wealth tied up in their business. I was in Nashville last week, and I had an owner come say, I got 95%. One of the guys that I write about in my book, The Perfect Exit with Flexaloy, one of the things that Andy Rayburn talked about is he had everything riding on his business. And I remember after we sold Flexaloy, we were on a private jet, and he's sitting across from me, and I'm looking at him, and he looks so good, he looks so relaxed. And I said to him, you look so relaxed, you look so good, Andy. He says, why wouldn't I be? I just took all my risk off the table. I feel great. I could do whatever I want now. And that's because there's so much. But unless you're able to transition, you're not going to get to that wealth, which is 80%. So think about the difference. Let's say if this is an $8 million business, it's probably generating $1.5 million to maybe even $2 million of cash flow a year, right? We're looking at maybe a 4 to 5 multiple. At least $1 million. 8 times multiple might be high, but let's say it is. Now, if we can't harvest the wealth in the business and we're left with $2 million because we can't get to that other $8 million, and most financial planners will tell you this is aggressive, at 6% a year before tax, assuming all of that is income earning, and we know most of it, not all of it is income earning, right? Because the rates are going to be lower, especially if you're de-risking. Your real estate probably isn't income earning. Your second home isn't income earning. Your boat isn't income earning. But let's say it all is income earning. You're looking at $120,000 a year. Annuity. Assuming you can make it an annuity. Nothing happens in the market. yada, 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 right? So think about that. You're making $1.5 million, and now you can't harvest the wealth of your business. Now you're making $120,000, if you're lucky. Ouch. What a pay cut. It's massive. This is why owners get trapped in their businesses, because they can't leave the business because they need the income. Because their lifestyle isn't built around $120,000 a year. It's built around $1 million a year. Now, if you're able to harvest the $10 million and get all that to work, you're at least looking at $600,000, which probably is still a 50% pay cut, but it's a lot easier than $120,000 a year, right? So you could tell I like math, right? I loved math. I started out as an accountant, but I couldn't cut it. But if you just look at the logic behind this, the math behind this, the reality has to hit you in the face. So let's figure out what we need to do to manage strategic value. And I say strategic value, it's really simple math. So to figure out the value of your business, which is where we have to start, it's cash, usually reflected as EBITDA, recasted EBITDA, times a market multiple equals value, or another calculation that's common is sales times a market multiple equals value. So we might say you're worth 35% of sales, or you're worth 5 or 6 times recasted EBITDA. That's typically how it's reflected, right? Now you control the left side of the equation, cash and sales. That's really under your control. It's based on the performance of your business. And I'd like to think that you're in control of that. But the game is really played here. This is where you play the game. And this is where a lot of you business owners are not playing the game. You're playing the game on the left side of the equation. Because if you have a 6 times multiple, for every dollar of net income you create $6 of value. So the $1 is immediate. You feel that in your pocket. But the $6 is your future. And you only get to that if you harvest, right? So that's where the game is played. Now what you need to know, owners, is that in every market, there's a range of value. So depending on what industry you're in, there's always a range. So for example, the range might be a low of 3 to a high of 8. And depending on what industry you're in and the conditions of the economy and things like that, the range may move up or down. Like if you were in the education market, the ranges were real high a few years ago, but now all this government regulation has been put into place, and the ranges have so you can't control that range, but you can control where you fall in the range so that you're always at the premier level. So let's say you're at 3 versus 8, right? Those companies that are 8 are the best-in-class companies. What makes them best in class? So one of the things you need to know is you need to know what your range is in your industry. You need to find that out. What are the trades? What are the multiples in my particular industry? There's too many industries here for me to be able to tell you what they are, but it depends on the size of your company. That matters. It depends on the terms that you're looking to exit. So typically, if you're going to sell to a strategic buyer, you're probably going to get a higher price or a higher multiple than if you're going to transition to a financial buyer, right? So there's a lot of different factors that come in there. But the point is, you can't control what the private capital market does, but what you can control is the value of your intangibles. Because 80% of your wealth is tied to the intangible assets in your business. And that's primarily what drives your multiple. So one of your takeaways is, what percentage of my wealth is tied up in my business? If you're like most owners, it's going to be 80 to 90%. So that's one thing you need to know. And the only way you know that is to get a valuation done. Understand what the value of your business is relative to the rest of your portfolio. And by the way, your financial planners have a heck of a time trying to manage your wealth if they're only managing 20% of it, right? One of the things that was interesting in the Phoenix survey that came out is I think it was something like 56% of the owners said that they had done estate planning, but only about 15 or 20% of them had included the value of the business in their estate plan. Well, that's where 80% of the value is. How could an estate plan be accurate if it doesn't include 80% of the owner's wealth? Can't be. All right. The second thing is 80% of that is tied to your intangible assets. So if you work on your intangibles, not only are you going to drive more income, you're going to drive that multiple up. And when you work both sides of the equation, driving cash and driving multiple, you get this exponential effect. If you were to look at these two companies, which one would you say is most valuable? The one on the left or the one on the right? Now, let me give you the scale first. So the scale is 1 to 6. I'll explain that when we come back from the break. 1 to 6. So if you're a 3, it means you're slightly below average. If you're a 4, it means you're slightly above average. If you're a 5 or a 6, you're best in class. And if you're below 3, you're in the lower end categories, or probably what we would consider the red zone. Which business has more value? Obviously, the one on the right, right? It's likely they have stronger human capital, they have stronger customer relationships, deeper recurring relationships. They clearly have better structural capital, processes, systems, things like that. Maybe they're ISO 9000 approved, something like that. And all of that results in them having a much better culture, which I think those numbers look good, because with that kind of a culture, a best-in-class culture, I'm liable to drive all my other numbers up. And culture is typically the best you could do. So it's obvious. Now, what's it worth? So let's go back to CWR. When we look at CWR, if he were able to move from, and remember I told him it wasn't worth anything, but if he was even average at $2.5 million, right, we would be able to move his recasted EBITDA, if he was operating at best in class, up to $4.2 million at the same level of sales. That's an increase of $1.7 million annually. Now, how do we know that? Well, we saw, and when we benchmarked, that the best-in-class companies in his industry were doing 12.6%, and he was doing 7.5%. And even though he was proud of his growth, he still was underperforming relative to the industry. So we're talking about putting another $1.7 million of income into his pocket each year. That alone is worth something. Now, what's it worth in value? In value, if he was operating at the medium, his business would be worth about $11.5 million, or roughly about 30%, 35% to sales. But if you were operating at best in class, the business would be worth 1 time sales, $32 million versus $11 million. That's an increase of $20 million in value of real wealth. And I'll also tell you, the odds of him being able to cash in the $32 million is far greater than him being able to cash in even the $11.5 million. So I might argue the value gap is $32 million, because you can't sell the business at 11.5, but I could sell it if it was up in the best in class at $32 million. That is massive. That's massive income. And that's not unusual. Now, why is that? Here's the math behind it. Right? It's pretty simple math. It's cash times a multiple equals your value. So we raised the cash by $1.7 million, but we also raised the multiple from 4.57 to 7.65. That's what the companies in his industry, the best-in-class companies, were trading at. So now I get this exponential effect of the multiple and the cash. And that's how the game's played. That's how the game's played. It's a math game. Now, implementation is a whole other thing, but figuring out the math and you guys knowing the math, right? My belief is through education, once you understand this, then you'll take action to figure out how to incorporate this into your businesses so that you can achieve those kind of numbers. And those numbers, you're talking 200-300% increases in value. All right? Okay. When we come back after the break, we're going to cover the 4 C's. We'll get into how we actually go about capturing that value using the 4 C's. And we'll talk through that in the second half of our discussion this morning, okay?